The Man in the Shadows, Bryan Kohberger and the Idaho College Murders. It was a Saturday night like any other. 4 college students, young and full of life, returned to their off-campus home after a night out. They laughed. They ate. They texted their friends goodnight. And by sunrise, they were gone. No break-in. No witnesses. No one heard screams. Only a phone call placed from inside the house. A trembling voice saying, "Someone's unconscious." What followed would become one of the most terrifying true crime sagas in recent American history. For students murdered in their sleep, no motive, no weapon, and a suspect whose face wouldn't be known for weeks, but had already driven across the country, watching the story unfold from his parents' house. He wasn't a criminal on the run. He was a PhD student, a teaching assistant, a man who studied crime, and may have tried to commit the perfect one. He asked strangers online to describe what it felt like to kill. Then, months later, for people were dead, and the country was left wondering, who is Bryan Kohberger? And what the hell happened inside the house on King Road? This isn't just a murder case. It's a psychological labyrinth, a story of obsession, technology, silence, and the chilling possibility that a killer might have been hiding in plain sight the whole time. This is not just about the man who did it, but the lives he took, the justice that followed, and the questions that may never be fully answered. In the quiet town of Moscow, Idaho, population just 25,000, life moved at its own slow pace. Students biked to class, professors sipped coffee in local diners, and the campus hummed with a sense of safety. Until that illusion was shattered. One house, for lives, one night. They were young, vibrant, and unforgettable. Kaylee Goncalves, 21, wild spirit, always laughing, planning to move to Austin. Madison Mogan, 21, her best friend since 6th grade. Loyal, kind, the kind of friend who never let you walk home alone. Xana Kernadle, 20, fiercely independent, athletic, and always working, juggling school and her job with a smile. And Ethan Chapin, 20, tall, easygoing, a triple who loves sports, adventure, and Xana. November 12th, 2022. A Saturday like countless others. Kaylee and Madison went out to the Corner Club, a popular bar downtown. They laughed, posed for selfies, and grabbed a bite of a food truck on their way home. Captured on camera, unaware it would be their last footage alive. Just 2 blocks away, Xana and Ethan were at a frat party. They left shortly before 1:45 a.m. Everything about the night seemed ordinary until it wasn't. By 2 a.m., all 4 had returned to 1122 King Road. 3 stories, 6 bedrooms, a house full of quiet, or so it seemed. Kaylee and Maddie were on the 3rd floor. Xana and Ethan on the 2nd. 2 other roommates, Bethany and Dylan, slept on the 1st floor. They would survive. But what happened above them would defy explanation. Somewhere between 3 o'clock and 4:00 a.m., a killer entered the house with a fixed blade knife and a plan. Investigators believe he moved silently, room to room, striking while his victims slept. But there were signs of a struggle, defensive wounds on Xana. She may have seen him, may have fought back. Ethan, too, was found outside the bedroom, killed trying to protect her. Kaylee and Maddie were found in the same bed, side by side. The attack was quick, brutal. The killer left behind no fingerprints, no DNA, except for one thing. The next morning, Dylan, one of the surviving roommates, found her door cracked open and saw a masked figure leaving through the sliding glass door. Shocked, frozen, she went back into her room. Hours passed. At 11:58 a.m., a 911 call was placed from a surviving roommate's phone. Police arrived to a scene of unspeakable horror. For students, dead. No suspect. No known motive. In the following days, the town of Moscow was paralyzed. Students fled campus. Parents called in fear. Reporters descended on the town, hunting for answers. But none came. Not at first. The police had only fragments. A white car, a knife sheath, a blurry camera frame, and a question that echoed louder each day. Then, 10 days after the murders, police released a photo. A white Hyundai Elantra spotted near the scene. No license plate, no driver visible. But it was a clue, one that would lead them, quietly, slowly, across the country, to a man with no criminal record, but a fascination with death. A PhD student who watched the investigation unfold from his childhood bedroom, and may have believed he committed the perfect crime. Before the name Bryan Kohberger was associated with murder, it was tied to something else entirely. A curious mind, a student of crime, a man who didn't just study killers. He wanted to understand what made them act. Coming up, who is Bryan Kohberger? And how did a man studying criminology become the focus of one of the biggest manhunts in America? At 28 years old, Kohberger was pursuing his PhD in criminology at Washington State University, just 10 miles from the University of Idaho. He taught classes. He sat quietly in lectures. And he walked the same streets as the very students he would later be accused of killing. He was described as intensely intelligent, but distant. Some classmates said he was awkward. Others said he had a superiority complex, often correcting professors mid-lecture. He didn't seem interested in friends, just theories. But then there was this, a chilling Reddit post made under a pseudonym, a survey aimed at ex-cons and people who had committed violent acts. It asked questions like, how did you feel after the crime? What thoughts went through your mind before you acted? Did you struggle with remorse? The post was written in a clinical tone, but something about it felt off, as if the person asking the questions wasn't just researching, but rehearsing. Kohberger had dedicated years to studying crime, but not just from textbooks. He wanted to get inside the minds of murderers. His thesis focused on how emotions and decision-making influence criminal behavior. In short, he wanted to know how killers think. But what if the student of crime was practicing something else entirely? In mid-November 2022, police released one of their first major clues. A white Hyundai Elantra spotted near the crime scene around 4:20 a.m. That same make and model was registered to Bryan Kohberger. What's more, Kohberger had been pulled over twice in that exact vehicle just days after the murders. First in Indiana, then in Pennsylvania. Both stops caught on dashcam. Calm, quiet, cooperative, and still completely under the radar. But technology never sleeps. Cell phone records showed Kohberger's device had been near the crime scene, not just the night of the murders, but a dozen times in the weeks before, as if he'd been watching, planning. There was no direct connection between him and the victims. No text, no social media interaction, just presence. Silent, consistent, eerie presence. And then there was a knife sheath, left on the bed near Madison and Kaylee. On it, a single trace of DNA. Investigators used genetic genealogy to narrow the pool, and when they took trash from Kohberger's parents' house in Pennsylvania, the DNA was a match. Suddenly, everything fell into place. The vehicle, the phone data, the behavior, the sheath. One man quietly surrounded the crime from every angle. And in December 2022, police made their move. At 1:30 a.m. on December 30th, a tactical FBI team broke into the Kohberger family home. Bryan was sleeping in his childhood bed. He didn't resist. He barely spoke. When police searched his car and apartment, they found gloves, masks, computers, and possible traces of blood. And yet, no clear confession, no motive, no explanation. The public wanted answers. But Kohberger gave none. He remained silent in court, pleaded not guilty, and stared ahead, stone-faced, as the families of four murdered students watched. Was he calculating? Or broken? Evil? Or simply empty inside? Even the experts couldn't agree. And still one question remained. Why? Coming up, the trial of the century never came. Because in July 2025, Bryan Kohberger did something that shocked everyone again. July 22nd, 2025. Nearly 3 years after 4 college students were found butchered in their off-campus home, Bryan Kohberger walked into an Idaho courtroom for what the world expected would be the beginning of a long public trial. Cameras were banned. Tensions were high. The victims' families sat in the front row. The prosecution was prepared to seek the death penalty. The defense was ready to fight it. Then something happened, something no one saw coming. As the judge read the charges, 4 counts of first-degree murder, 1 count of burglary, Bryan Kohberger looked up and said, "Guilty." It was the word everyone had been waiting to hear. But not like this. No trial, no cross-examinations, no defense strategy, just a quiet admission, and silence. For the families of Kaylee, Madison, Xana, and Ethan, the word brought closure, but not peace, because with it came no explanation, no motive, no apology. He didn't say why. He didn't cry. He didn't offer the slightest glimpse into what led him to slaughter for strangers in the middle of the night. Psychologists called it narcissism. Others called it cowardice. But the families, they called it theft, the theft of their right to ever truly understand. Kaylee's father said, "We came here for answers. We didn't get any." Ethan's mother added, "He robbed us of justice the same way he robbed our son of his life." Kohberger was sentenced to 4 consecutive life terms, 1 for each victim, without the possibility of parole. The death penalty was taken off the table as part of the plea deal. No trial, no appeals, just prison. He now sits in a maximum security facility under 23-hour lockdown, with no visitors, no media access, and no further chance to speak. Theories still swirl. Was it a thrill kill? A fantasy acted out by someone who thought he was smarter than the system? Or was there something deeper, some slight, real or imagined, that triggered massacre? He had no known relationship to the victims. No message. No manifesto. Just patterns. Just presence. Just death. But this story isn't just about Bryan Kohberger. It's about 4 people whose lives were stolen. Kaylee Goncalves, bright, fearless, the light in every room. Madison Mogan, warm, creative, her laugh echoing long after she left. Xana Kernodle, resilient, sharp, always moving towards something better. And Ethan Chapin, joyful, generous, a son, a brother, a boyfriend, a friend. They were the reason the nation stopped and stared. They are the reason the story matters. We may never truly know why. We may never understand what darkness drove a man who studied killers to become one. But we do know this. Evil often hides in plain sight. And sometimes evil watches, waits, and walks right among us. Coming up next, we go deeper into the mind of Bryan Kohberger, what the files revealed, what the experts missed, and why some believe this won't be the last time someone like him walks free until it's too late. To understand what Bryan Kohberger did, we have to understand how he thought. Because for all his silence in court, he was never truly quiet. Not online, not in class, and not in his own mind. In psychology, there's a concept known as a malignant narcissist, a personality marked by grandiosity, intellectual superiority, and beneath it all, rage. That description fits Kohberger like a second skin. He didn't just study criminal minds. He seemed to identify with them. He was fascinated by the structure of violence, how it worked, how it felt, how people got away with it. In the summer of 2022, he posted anonymously to Reddit, "How did it feel when you committed crime? Did you struggle with guilt or were you excited?" These weren't casual curiosities. They were behavioral rehearsals. Multiple students described Kohberger as arrogant, judgmental, and obsessed with serial killers. One even said, it was like he was trying to become the case we were studying. He corrected professors, refused to participate in group activities, and once led a classroom debate about Ted Bundy with an intensity that made others uncomfortable. Cell phone data showed Kohberger visited the victim's neighborhood at least 12 times in the weeks before the murders. He didn't knock. He didn't speak. He just watched. Always late at night. Always alone. That's not impulsive violence. That's predatory behavior. Experts brought in to analyze Kohberger's behavior used chilling terms. Lack of empathy. Obsession with dominance. Detached morality. He didn't care about the lives he ended. He cared about how well he executed the plan. Like Bundy, he was educated, articulate, and narcissistic. Like BTK, he craved control. Like the Zodiac, he left just enough behind to create mystery. But unlike most, Kohberger wanted to watch the aftermath in real time. And he did, while the contents of his full digital footprint remained sealed to the public. Authorities confirmed that Kohberger made frequent internet searches about the crime, even visiting forums where people were speculating about the case. It was almost as if he wanted to see if they were catching up to him. They were, and he was watching. Imagine this. You commit 4 brutal murders. Then you teach class 2 days later on how criminals think. That's not just control. That's delusion. He believed he was the smartest person in the room. And for a while, he might have been. There are thousands of criminology students across America. Hundreds of professors. But only one Bryan Kohberger. A man who turned obsession into action and proved that even those who study monsters can become one. In the end, the case may be closed, but the warning remains wide open. That intelligence does not equal empathy. That obsession, when fed in silence, can rot into something deadly. Coming up next, the internet's obsession with the case. The theories, the misinformation, the fans of a killer, and how true crime culture may be shaping killers in real time. In 2022, the United States had over 1 million unsolved crimes. But in November that year, the nation focused all its attention on one horrific event: the brutal murders of 4 college students in a quiet Idaho town. And what happened next exposed something just as disturbing. The internet exploded. Theories, timelines, amateur sleuths, everyone, everywhere trying to solve the case. Not just because they cared, but because it was content. It wasn't just interest. It was monetized obsession. True crime influencers gained thousands of followers overnight. Reddit threads turned into war rooms. And before Kohberger's name was even known, innocent people were being accused. A professor at the University of Idaho was falsely identified as the killer by a TikTok creator with millions of views. The accusation? Pure speculation without a shred of evidence. The digital rumor mill turned deadly. Accusations spread like wildfire. Victim blaming, grief shaming, false evidence, all disguised as investigation. And then came the disturbing shift, the rise of fans. Of him. Teenagers writing love letters to Bryan Kohberger in prison. Posts calling him misunderstood, hot, brilliant. Hashtags like #FreeBryan and #BryanInnocent began trending. Some were trolls, but many were completely serious. Experts say it's not new. Charles Manson had groupies. Ted Bundy had courtroom fans. And now, Bryan Kohberger joins a sick pantheon of killers who are idolized by the very public they horrified. He's innocent until proven guilty. I'd marry him in a heartbeat. He's so intelligent, he must have had a reason. We live in a world where attention is currency, and murder can be a brand. True crime isn't just a genre. It's a booming industry. Documentaries, podcasts, TikToks, memes. And it walks a fine line between informing and exploiting. For every video honoring the victims, there's another one romanticizing the killer. The story becomes about him. The victims fade. Kaylee's family pleaded with the public. Please stop making him famous. Maddie's sister wrote, "Every time I open TikTok, I see my sister's face in someone's thumbnail next to her killer. It hurts more than I can say." Some experts now ask, are we creating the next generation of killers by turning them into celebrities? Kohberger, like others before him, appeared to follow the coverage closely. He knew what was being said. He may have wanted to be studied. And now he is. We must ask ourselves, When does curiosity become complicity? When does a story become a spectacle? And how do we keep tragedy from becoming trend? Because if the next Bryan Kohberger is out there right now, watching, reading, waiting, we may be giving him everything he needs to act. Coming up next, the legacy of the case, how it changed campus security, law enforcement tactics, and the way America views safety in college towns, and why this one case may be a turning point in true crime history.